Sprint Saturday in just the fourth Grand Prix of Hungary in history takes place at the Balaton Park circuit, around 90 kilometres from the stunning capital of Budapest, neighbouring the largest lake in Central Europe and packed with beaches, volcanic hills and resort towns. Balaton is a major tourist hotspot. Hot laps are the order of the day in the Tissot Sprint Next Live. It's time for MotoGP. Well, what a difference a week makes from the high speed, the fast and flowing Mugello circuit in Italy. And we come to a complete contrast, measuring just over 4 kilometres in length, just over 2.5 miles. That is the Balaton Park circuit. 17 corners, 7 of them right, 10 of them left. A very short start-finish straight where the MotoGP bikes barely click into top gear. Tight run through sector 2, including one of the fastest corners on the circuit, turn 8. The first of 3 chicanes starts sector 3 into 9 and 10. The lap completed by the double left-handers of 16 and 17. Commanding braking points, the hardest of all of them is into turn 5. And what about the overtaking hotspots? There are quite a few of them around this Balaton Park circuit. This one of the most popular. Marc Marquez seasonally leading the Grand Prix here last year at turn 1. Just 6 days ago now in the Tuscany Mountains and the glorious sunshine of Mugello, it was a historic all-Aprilia front row of the grid that fired away for the start of round 7. Marc Marquez back from injury, fighting inside the top 6. Pecco Bagnaia though in front of his home crowd and made so much of the early running before this. Key move at San Donato came from Marco Bezzecchi. Yet another, a fourth factory Aprilia 1-2 was secured as Jorge Martin came through on Bagnaia late on, and Bagnaia just about hanging on to a home podium after a stunning late charge, a brilliant late rally by Trackhouse Aprilia's Ayagura. Marco Bezzecchi then, overcome by emotions. What a special scene that was. What an unforgettable Mugello Grand Prix, an unforgettable Grand Prix of Italy was for Marco Bezzecchi and for Aprilia. A new top speed record, a new all-time lap record, Aprilia's first ever win in Mugello, Marco Bezzecchi's first ever win in Mugello, and it all brings us to Balaton for Chapter 8 in the 2026 MotoGP World Championship. A week after they locked out the front row of the grid in Mugello, on top of Aprilia, coming up in this 13-lap Tissot sprint here in the Grand Prix of Hungary is the world champion leader Marco Bezzecchi, who launches away from 6th place behind what is, without any question, a mouth-watering front row of the grid. The old and the new titans in MotoGP going head-to-head. Marc Marquez taking his 76th MotoGP pole position in stunning fashion this morning. Marc Marquez on just his 2nd Grand Prix since returning from double surgery on his right foot and the long-standing problematic right shoulder, of course. He first injured back in Mandalika last October. Well, he is on pole position alongside him Pedro Acosta, who has been so fast here all weekend. Those two, of course, have gone toe-to-toe in a sprint so far this season. They locked horns and had close combat in the Italian Grand Prix last weekend. They are future factory Ducati teammates, and they start alongside each other here for this Grand Prix of Hungary. The only 2 riders this weekend, Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta, that have delivered laps in the 136, as it looks like it potentially could be just a straight shootout, a straight showdown between the new and the old guard. Fermin Aldeguer completing the front row of the grid, his first front row since he was victorious over in Indonesia on our flyway tour at the end of last season. Fabio Di Gianantonio leads row 2 in 4th place with world championship leader Marco Bezzecchi, as mentioned. He completes that 2nd row, an all-Italian 2nd row, featuring Pecco Bagnaia, who came through Q1's fastest. He starts 5th. It's all going to unfold. It'll be lights out for the sprint in about 25 minutes' time. Cannot wait. This one should be spicy. This one should be tasty. Marc Marquez versus Pedro Acosta at the head of the grid. Matt Burt-Lewis to be in the commentary box. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. Lewis, you get the feeling that when it is lights out in about 25 minutes time, we potentially could be witnessing something very, very special.
Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta, generally when they go head to head, we see something special because neither knows the meaning of the words backward step. They are constantly on the attack. Marc Marquez loved his words to Jack in Park Lane after qualifying when he was asked whether potentially he was the rider to beat or whether it was Pedro. Marc Marquez said the rider on pole position is the rider to beat. A clear message to Pedro Acosta.
And it wasn't an easy pole position. They never are they, in MotoGP? But this was the start of Marc Marquez's Q2 this morning. Just look at him now, as you mentioned in commentary this morning, how he was quickly, the presence of mind to make sure that the motor did not stop running on that factory Ducati, grabbing the clutch as he slid towards the blue paint on the outside of that resurfaced turn one. That was how Marc's Q2 started. It finished, though, with a stunning 1:36.785 seconds, less than 5 seconds after Marc tumbled out in that first corner. Directly behind him, Fabio Di Giannantonio also tumbled out on his Ducati GP26. The pair of them doing great rescue jobs here in Balaton. Marc recovering to pole position. Digia bouncing back from his early spill at turn one to head row 2 in fourth.
And the start is, well, it's always important in any sprint, in any Grand Prix, but it feels super significant this afternoon and again tomorrow. We've spoken at length about this circuit and the difficulty of overtaking. It's certainly towards the high end in terms of difficulty of overtaking. So Pedro Acosta is going to overhaul Marc Marquez and I guess win a sprint without any controversy attached to it, because I think it's fair to say there was a slight element of it back in Buriram at the start of the season. Pedro Acosta's clearly best opportunity will come in those first 300 metres. Fastest
on Friday in 2 of the last 3 Grand Prix, 8th front row start beckoning for Acosta in what is his 49th Premier Class appearance. Previous front row so far this year, 3rd in Austin, did deliver a podium in the main Grand Prix over in Texas. His last front row was a pole in Catalonia, which he did convert into a 2nd place in the Grand Prix. Adding to that spice, adding to the ingredients on that front row is Fermin Aldeguer. Not a lot of love lost between him and Pedro Acosta in recent weeks and recent months. Aldeguer finds himself on the front row of the grid for the first time since his breakthrough weekend over in Mandalika in Indonesia, where he went on from 2nd on the grid to claim a double podium, one of only 2 double podiums he took in his debut season last year. And of course, more crucially, from that last front row, he did go on to win that Grand Prix of Indonesia.
And he'll be thinking, if I make a good start, I'm on the inside line in that run towards the first corner, and there'll be a major charge to try and get to that first apex first. Will Fabio Di Giannantonio be a part of that? He goes from the front of row 2. And he was pretty happy, it has to be said, with that at the end of qualifying. As Matt mentioned, it was almost a forgotten crash at the start of qualifying 2 earlier on today, as Marc Marquez dropped it at turn 1. Fabio Di Giannantonio appeared to almost do the same in sympathy. But like Marc Marquez, Di Giannantonio regrouped to put himself at the front of row 2. If he could get the start right, he's certainly going to be in that podium battle.
Qualified top 6 in 7 of the opening 8 Grand Prix. Mugello, actually, last weekend, the only time that Digia has started outside of those first 2 rows. Going for 3 sprint podiums in a row for just the 2nd time, a sequence which he started here in Balaton last year. Went on to follow that up with sprint podiums in Misano and in Catalonia. No sprint victory since Australia last year, which feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? For World Championship leader Marco Bezzecchi, fresh off the back of the best Grand Prix of his career, the best day of his life. I'm sure he's still pinching himself. He reckons he watched that Mugello Grand Prix more than 10 times, but Bezzecchi has work to do. A bit of a response here today in qualifying from Ducati after Aprilia's historic front row lockout in qualifying last weekend. We've got 4 Ducatis starting in the top 5 this afternoon for the first time in pretty much exactly a year since they did so at the Aragon Grand Prix last June.
Yeah, the Aprilias, it's almost as if they're sort of handcuffed a bit this weekend. They can't just let those Aprilias go around this circuit. Marco Bezzecchi won't be thrilled, clearly, with 6th on the grid. He comes to Grand Prix expecting to be higher up the order than that. But in terms of the championship, the way it currently sits, it's actually not too bad for him. 6th, 2 places ahead of his teammate and title rival Jorge Martin in 8th. And you'd imagine if the Ducatis and Pedro Acosta go off and have their own race at the front, surely Marco's main focus will be on where his teammate is.
The Aprilia heavyweights have some work to do. Bezzecchi 6, Ralph Hernandez, who we just saw there on screens, a sprint winner in Mugello 7 days ago. He's 7th, and once again finding himself on the 3rd row of the grid. There's the rider 2nd in the World Championship coming into this Balaton battle, 28-year-old Spaniard Jorge Martin. That's now the 3rd row for Martin in 5 of the last 6 Grand Prix. Last year, if you cast your minds back to late August, Jorge Martin came from 16th to 4th in the main Grand Prix, so overtaking not an issue in this Grand Prix of Hungary last year for the Martinator. He's on that 3rd row with Luca Marini, joint season best qualifying, a joint season best grid position for Marini in 9th spot.
Marini had a very good sprint here last year, didn't he, as well, finishing up in 4th place, so potential opportunity for Luca to do something similar after so many close eliminations in qualifying 1. This time he was on the right side of those margins as he bumped his teammate Joan Mir out of the top 2 in that Q1 session. Of course, joined in the top 2 in that Q1 session by Pecco Bagnaia, who certainly made the best of his reprieve by getting himself onto row 2.
So Marc Marquez undefeated in a Q2 session here in Balaton Park. He was undefeated in our race action last year. He won the sprint by over 2 seconds. He crushed the opposition in the main Grand Prix on Sunday by over 4 seconds. On Sunday, though, his closest rival, the closest competition, was posed by Pedro Acosta. Riders 1st and 2nd on the grid, 1st and 2nd across the line at the end of last year's Grand Prix of Hungary. Fascinating to see, isn't it, how the Aprilias can fight their way through. They've got their work cut out with a whole gaggle of fast Ducatis ahead of them. Aldiger on the front row. The Gian Antonio, we know, has had very good race pace. And Pecco Bagnaia as well, middle of the 2nd row in 5th. He came through fastest out of Q1. Looked like he'd rid himself of some of the rear grip issues which plagued him so badly on Friday. So don't discount Pecco Bagnaia as well. He's already a 3-time sprint podium finisher this year.
And Marc Marquez already a sprint winner, and that was, of course, pre-recent surgery. Won the Tissot sprint back in Brazil, and of course in rather odd circumstances won the sprint in Jerez when he picked himself up from a crash in changing conditions to ultimately win on that particular Saturday afternoon. So chasing a 3rd gold medal of the season from a 76th MotoGP pole position, and we're still talking about a rider who is nowhere near 100%.
Yeah, this is not alien territory, isn't it? This is not a new experience for Marc Marquez. 104th pole position of his Grand Prix career and counting. It's tomorrow the day where he breaks the ton in terms of Grand Prix victories. Can he join that elite club with Giacomo Agostini and Valentino Rossi? The helicopter gives us a spectacular aerial show above the grid here. All Spanish front row then. All Italian 2nd row of the grid. We've got Italians and Spaniards looking at the first 3 rows. Best non-Italian and Spaniard is Ayagura, the Japanese rider, in 10th place. Not a bad effort from Ayagura. In fact, it's only the 7th time in his 26th MotoGP start he finds himself starting inside the top 10 places. Ayagura, tough old weekend he had here last year. 11th in the Grand Prix, 15th in the sprint. But Marc Marquez, as he so often does, produce another magic Q2 performance this morning. We know that he's going to be firing away from pole position. Further down, though, what will be the Aprilia challenge? Can Ralph Hernandez make it back-to-back sprint wins? And what about Ayagura on that 4th row in 10? Let's get the thoughts of Trackhouse boss Davide Brivio with Jack.
Yes, AC/DC thunders out behind us. 2 riders in relatively good position when you compare it to what the rest of the Aprilias are able to do. Is this just going to be one of those days where you try and learn as much to help you tomorrow, Davide?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so bad, but we hope for the better, to be honest, in terms of grid position. We were already in Q2. Raul was quite confident, but there was something missing during the qualifying. Something also in terms of bike setting, which we're trying to further improve for the race. Let's see, yeah, all the Aprilia together, so let's see what's happening. And no, but anyway, as far as concerned Raul, we start in P7. He has a good pace, and let's see. Of course, here it's difficult to overtake. Let's see what we can, if we can recover some position. It's always a kind of a guy that able to recover a bit. Starting from P10 is much better than the last few rounds. Let's see, we try.
You made a tyre gamble on the grid 1 week ago, which works brilliantly. Any chance of the same happening again?
Yeah, no, I think today is much more, let's say, common. Looks like everybody's on the same choice, and because it's a sprint, it's a short race, and looks like that's probably everybody is going on soft because the medium is not giving a big advantage. It looks like it takes a few laps to warm up, and then in terms of grip is remain the same as the soft. So looks like today is nowhere to make the gamble.
Thanks, Davide. Good luck.
Thank you, bye.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks, Davide. Yeah, so far on the grid, as you can see, the first 3 rows, everybody is on the medium front soft rear tyre, Lewis.
Yep, Igor from 10th on the grid, as we heard there, with Davide Brivio, as we now cycle through to rows 6 and 7. Every rider in the field is on that soft rear tyre. Back to Cal Crutchlow, who completes the grid in 22nd place. So Ducatis first, third, fourth and fifth. Top KTM second with Pedro Acosta. The Aprilias, their likely challenge is going to come from 6th, 7th and 8th. A Honda leading contender is Luca Runi in 9th, and Jack Miller, as we knew after Q1 when Quartararo, Toprak and Rins were knocked out. Miller, the leading Yamaha on the grid, starting 12th.
There was that great shot here, wasn't there, last August when Marc Marquez completed the sprint and Grand Prix victory double of his Ducati crew, handing him a sticker post the Sunday Grand Prix which just simply said Balaton Mark, which was a pretty nice touch as he completed what eventually would be one of 10 double wins he managed on his way to a 7th World Championship last year. Hasn't been as plain sailing as what we saw in Mugello last weekend as far as Aprilia go, but you can never discount, can you? Marco Bezzecchi, Jorge Martin, Ralph Fernandez, Aprilia's lightning off the line so far. This is like the thoughts of the boss, Paolo Bonora, with Jack.
Yeah, Aprilia lockout on the front row of the grid 1 week ago, but this time around it feels as though Ducati just have the edge. 4 Ducatis inside the top 5, Paolo. So what happened this morning that you weren't able to make that massive step you were last week from Friday to Saturday?
Yeah, we are struggling a bit to stop the bike, in particular with the soft rear on the tire in the time attack mode. The particular track layout and the grip level affect a lot, and yeah, to be honest, we didn't find the correct solution to allow the rider to work with the soft rear. We will see. Will be a tricky game during this sprint, but to be honest, we are more in confidence on the medium tire that probably we will use for tomorrow race for the long distance.
Okay, good luck, Paolo. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks as always to Aprilia boss Paolo Bonora. Thanks, Jack, once again. Yeah, Ralph Fernandez then heading that 3rd row of the grid last weekend in Mugello, became just the 11th different sprint winner. 5th on board in Aprilia with Martin Bezzecchi, Maverick Vinales and Aleix Espargaro, of course, back in the day. One of only 4 sprint podiums, 66 for Ralph Fernandez. Not the easiest task for him to fight his way through, and the riders are going to be wary, in particular when they break for the first time on what is a very short run down to the first corner. We've said it a few times this weekend, but just a quick reminder, if you are with us for the first time this weekend, there's been a slight resurface, new patches of tarmac at the 1st and 6th corner, and it's pretty slick and pretty greasy, the braking zone for turn 1, which is the reason why we saw Marc Marquez and Fabio Di Giannantonio go down there this morning. While we're on the subject of Digia, who once again has shown himself to be super fast, super competitive once again here in Hungary. Let's get the thoughts of his boss, Pablo Nieto, with Jack.
Yeah, once again, Fabio super consistent, making sure he's in the game every weekend. Everyone is talking about Marquez versus Acosta, Acosta versus Marquez. Is this one of those days where Digi can maybe go under the radar and slip into contention, Pablo?
Can be, why not? No, I think now they have a little bit more something else that we are missing. I think Pedro and Marc, they are super fast here in this track, but then Fermin and Fabio and Dilla more or less are in the same pace. But also it's true that during the race it's very difficult because here make overtakes is not like Mugello, so it's going to be much more difficult. So that means the first lap and the start is going to be very, very important for the race.
Pecco said that Ducati made some progress on Sunday, getting the bike off the line with the starts. Is that something that you feel you've also been able to make?
Yeah, it can be. It's very difficult, but because also with Dilla, one of the things that we are suffering a little bit more than the other riders is the start, no? So we have to try to make a very good start, try to follow in Marquez, and then we will see what happens.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to VR46 boss Pablo Nieto. All the riders keeping themselves cool and coming to the grid late on, including Pecco Bagnaia, who was rather enjoying a bit of AC/DC thunderstruck, wasn't he, over the loudspeakers. Here you can see Pecco rocking away to it. We know he's a big Kiss fan, even the Kiss celebration when he won his home Grand Prix Mugello a couple of years ago. So getting himself set with some proper good old-fashioned rock and roll. Rocking and rolling onto the front row of the grid this morning in Q2 was Fermin Aldeguer. What a ride by him. And Iker Lecuona starring as Alex Marquez's substitute in 16th place. Let's get the thoughts of their boss, Michele Massini, with Jack.
Yeah, it's a very happy Michele Massini for good reason. As you guys say, Iker Lecuona, superb this weekend, but a lot of the focus, I imagine, is going to be on Fermin Aldeguer. Front row of the grid for the first time this year, and it feels as though has a very good chance of being on the podium, Michele.
Yeah, really a solid weekend so far for us and for Fermin. And I think that he find back a really good feeling since after the RS test onwards. It's true that he's not already 100% after the injury, but he's better and better week by week. And so we still also managing in a different way the weekend. We did some a bit less laps during the practice. That is help him a lot to don't create too much load on the physical aspect. But I think that we deserve the first row. That he helps a lot to try to do 2 solid races.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Gresini boss Michele Massini 3 times last year. Fermin Aldeguer found himself to the medal ceremony at the end of a sprint in Le Mans, in Aragon, and most recently in Mandalika. There are your sprint points this season. Advantage Jorge Martin, 45 points, 7 more than Marc Marquez. Now then, KTM have looked so good all weekend. Pedro Acosta there leading light on the front row grid. Let's get some pre-sprint thoughts from his crew chief, Paul Trevathan.
Yeah, as a fan, Paul, I can't wait for this one. Marc versus Pedro, we've seen it before and it always produces fireworks. They just seem to raise their game against one another. So what do we expect here?
Yeah, I think a little bit more fireworks, like you were saying. You know, Marc looks like in much better form. His pace is also pretty good. Pedro's riding really well, and I think both don't want the other one to be in front. So let's see what happens. You know, get through this first sector without any trouble. It's always a bit tricky here, and then we'll go racing and see what happens.
Good luck.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Paul Trevathan. Yeah, if you go by the name of Marc Marquez and you go by the name of Pedro Acosta, you love winning and you absolutely loathe losing. There can be only one winner though, can't there, in this upcoming sprint? It's going to be juicy, this one, isn't it? You really feel like we're going to be witnessing something very special over the 13 laps. Acosta's 8th front row, his 3rd this year. A long way further back on the grid what we saw him last year. Enea Bastianini 10 places worse off than this very Grand Prix last August. Lewis, can we make any kind of a case for Enea getting himself into the podium battle?
Only if he makes a rocket start, I think. Of course, he needs a better sprint than he had last year, which couldn't have really gone much worse when he was taken out the first corner and of course got involved with Johan Zarco later on that first lap. I guess the danger for Marquez and Acosta on the front row of the grid, they too clearly appeared to have the superior pace. Pablo Nieto said it himself to Jack on the grid, but if they're too busy watching each other at the start of the sprint or even around the early laps while the group is still together, they could potentially find themselves picked off. Aldeguer and Gian Antonio will be waiting to pounce.
Some very serious deliberations going on here with Jack Miller and his car. I just wonder whether Jack might be thinking to switch over to the medium rear tyre. We'll keep a close eye on that one. Marc Marquez, though, flying to his 76th MotoGP pole position this morning. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Davide Tardozzi.
Davide, I feel like we could be in for a treat here because whenever Marc and Pedro have gone toe-to-toe this year so far, we've been treated to something special. Are we going to see something special again?
We'll see, because apart the tricky point that is the first corner, I think that the main for Marc is now to start to finish races and be healthy again, and this it will be it can happen before 1 or 2 months. But anyway, for sure he's a top rider and he has the speed to do what he did this morning, but the race is another story, so we'll see the length of the race, how his body will react.
We know tomorrow, with the physical limitations that he has, that fighting for victory, fighting for the podium is going to be much more challenging. Today, he's going to be all in, surely.
Yeah, I guess so, but again, we would like him to finish the races, and the podium is important, but mainly that he finish the race. And we are waiting for him because we know that when it will be healthy 100%, it will be very tough to beat for everybody.
Thanks, Davide. Good luck.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Davide Todd. It seems like Marc Marquez at the moment is fighting with himself as much as his rivals in the MotoGP World Championship, just fighting to curtail what's his DNA, what is his natural, ruthless killer instinct to go for the jugular. Marc Marquez said yesterday, I've got to be patient. Marc Marquez and patience, not phrases and words that you tend to put together too often. As we see a local hero in every sense of the phrase, Gabor Talmashi, former 125cc world champion, still hugely, immensely popular in front of his home crowd. There ain't going to be any patience shown by Marc Marquez on this run down to the first corner. He knows, though, he can't get ahead of himself. He keeps saying, doesn't he, Lewis, I can't run before I can walk. But this is Marc Marquez on pole position. This is Marc Marquez with Pedro Acosta alongside him on the grid.
Yeah, there is so much more than just 12 points and a gold medal up for grabs when those two go head to head. It feels like they're already thinking of next year when they're going to be in the same colours, on the same bikes, going head to head. And you know that Pedro Acosta is well aware of the standing of Marc Marquez in terms of not just current greats, but all-time greats. So any opportunity to try and lay one on the 7-time MotoGP World Champion, as we saw in Burrow at the start of the year, Pedro Acosta is never shy of coming through.
In the zone, full focused, is ready, Acosta. So too is the world champions leader Marco Bezzecchi. Just the one sprint podium so far this year. His Saturday afternoon form has deserted him. Somewhat as good as he has been, as awesome as he has been on Sundays, Marco Bezzecchi, with 4 Grand Prix wins already. He has had his struggles. He has suffered a little bit on sprint Saturdays. His only visit to the medal ceremony was a 3rd place, a bronze at the French Grand Prix in Le Mans, as we've seen Jorge Martin getting himself prepped and ready. Nobody in Grand Prix history has won more sprints than the 28-year-old Spaniard. His tally 18 sprint victories. Marc Marquez could match that if he is victorious in this 13-lap sprint coming up shortly here in Hungary. The BMW safety car is going to peel away at the front of this grid. It feels like we've got the hottest conditions of the weekend so far. It's pretty tense down there. We're all primed and ready as the BMW safety car lays down some rubber in that greasy, that slick first corner. There was drama there, wasn't there, last year in the sprint when Fabio Quartararo lunged on the inside, picked up Fabio Quartararo, he picked up Marc Marquez, he made a little bit of contact with Enea Bastianini, so it's going to be who can come through turn 1 clean, as we see Fermin Aldeguer then on the front row of the grid for the first time in 2026. Pedro Acosta alongside him, looking to add just his 2nd ever sprint gold medal. 2nd goes the KTM factory star, but from pole position number 76, it's back-to-back poles here in Balaton for the reigning world champion, the one, the only, Marc Marquez. So far in the 2026 MotoGP World Championships, Sprint Saturdays have